opportunity to come to you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and engaging in conversation with the listening audience, as we say, on issues that truly do impact all of our lives, with the goal of educating, enlightening, and in elevating the thinking in our listening audience. Good evening to you, and you are the reason we get up in the morning, put it that way. Or in this case, stay up all the way until the evening.
That's it. Yeah. Either way, we definitely look forward to it every day. That's for sure.
We certainly do. Well, today is Monday, and first of all, the pecuniary matters. Welcome to another edition of Straight Talk, broadcasting live on your radio dial at 103.1 FM and simulcasting live over Facebook and YouTube, both on our own page, Straight Talk Radio Show, on YouTube and Facebook, as well as the ACT Cruise Tourism page. Ours is where you can find us on streaming video. The phone lines are open on this otherwise open mic Monday. No guests slated to be in studios today, but we do have some guests planned throughout the course of this week, which we will update you on as the week goes by. The phone lines are open at 745-2626, or as usual, you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number. Our version of the 1-800 line, all it requires on your end is a Wi-Fi connection, and you can reach out to us either via a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. Either way, as always, we will receive your messages and share them both in the order that they were received and with the goal of sharing them live on air before the show concludes each and every day. We have a number of topics in which we thought were sort of important to share with the listening audience. As I said last week, trust us, if you stick to Straight Talk, you never have to pick up a newspaper again.
That's right.
We go through it Monday through Friday, pull out the salient bits that we think are important to you and you need to know about.
So does that mean if it's not on here, it's not news, Mr.
Absolutely. It's
I think that's what you're
news if you did not hear it on Straight Talk.
Just not news.
No, it's just not news. It's just a bunch of information that really, at the end of it,
just clutter your mind.
You don't need to know about.
Don't clutter your mind with nonsense.
Quite right, indeed. We're trying to work with you.
I get straight to the point on Straight Talk.
You got it.
There you go.
I couldn't have said it any better myself.
There you go.
Well, we got at least two good news items. One of which plucked from the headlines, and the other is a bit of humor, which we'll share next. And I'll explain.
You heard me laugh. You heard me laughing, right?
I heard you laughing. So
I only heard that there was a humor coming up, and I'm already laughing.
That's right. And I haven't shared the bit of humor with my colleague yet, so
it's going to be fresh to me too.
Exactly, going for that genuine, unplanned reaction.
I'm good at it.
You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. We're going to see what happens.
I won't lie to you.
No, you won't. No, you won't. So, plucked from the headlines: Special Olympics began actually over the weekend in the Cayman Islands. Over the past few months, athletes from the Special Olympics Cayman Islands have been putting in the work to prepare for the 2025 National Games. The annual games, now in their 36th consecutive year, began on Saturday, the 7th of June, and runs all week until the 14th of June, and will feature 5 sports: swimming, bocce, athletics, which include track and field, basketball, and stand-up paddleboarding, which I think is rather interesting. And this is considered, quote-unquote, the Special Olympic Games. Sometimes I think I might fall in that category, given the fact that I don't think I can stand up paddleboard. So I think that's going to be rather significant to point out, but should be interesting to say the least. Haley Draver, I think is the way we pronounce it.
Well, I want to know what the bocce is.
Bocce ball is, I can't even explain it.
How do you spell that?
B-O-C-C-E.
B-O-C-C-E.
As that was pronounced.
All right, we're searching this up now. We got to get deal with
that. Blem. Let's see.
Bocce is a ball sport.
Bocce ball, according to Google, is played on a rectangular court where 2 teams or individuals alternate throwing bocce balls towards a target. The team with the closest bocce ball to the target at the end of each frame scores points. The first team to reach a predetermined number of points, typically either 12 or 13, wins. So I don't know whether it's, kind of like crochet, but without the funny mallet, where you have these circles at, a predetermined distance in front of you, and you're just basically aiming to get gets as close to the circle with the various rings accounting for certain points is what I'm assuming here.
Yeah, when you mention it, I kind of picture a couple of guys in the alleyway throwing the craps or whatever. I don't know. Either way, it sounds like it might be one of those little French words, bocce or something.
Bocce. Right? I think it's pronounced bocce. But if I could be wrong.
It says it originated in Italy and is part of the broader family of, what's it, Bole's sport. Well, we've been educated, enlightened, and elevated on exactly what bocce is. B-O-C-C-E. Have fun.
There you go. It kind of reminds, like I said, it reminds me of croquet, but there's another sport they do in the Olympics, but they do it on ice, where you normally you got teams of three.
Yeah, right.
They're rolling this
the kettle.
Yes, and then they're scraping the ice, smoothing the ice as it gets closer to the target.
The last thing we need is nicks of ice just impeding your kettle.
Well, hey, they have found they have what is it, an ice rink in Tampa Bay. Do you remember when, I don't know if you know this, but certainly when the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is a hockey team in the sunny state of Florida, I remember when it was first announced, I thought, how in the world did they come up with this idea?
You have one note like that in Fort Lauderdale, too.
Yeah, and of course, the second thought rolled into my head, if, Florida, which it is, anywhere near the tropical temperatures like we find here in the Cayman Islands, and some might argue it's more so because of the concrete jungle that exists, then what amazing light bill that building must ramp up just to keep the ice, so to speak, cold when outside is only the surface of the temperature of the sun.
Surface of the sun.
So it'll be interesting. But so anyway, Special Olympics ongoing now. The venues include the Cayman Islands International School, the Art Center, and Truman Bodden Sports Complex for the various events. And the stand-up paddleboarding apparently will take place, I guess, in the canals along Dragon Bay. So would encourage members of the listening audience to check online for details. Special Olympics Cayman. You can find out all about it. There are some 60 athletes that are expected to compete here and in Cayman, and spectators are encouraged by the Special Olympics Cayman Islands Committee to come out and show their support by wearing, of course, Cayman colors. Interesting side note, again, whether you're in for a little bit of trivia, according to the Special Olympics Organization, an estimated 200 million people worldwide have an intellectual disability of some kind or the other. But the great thing about the Special Olympics is it shows, again, that those disabilities have no reason to hamper a person's ability to be the best that they can be.
We can overcome.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I think that's the inspiring aspect of the Special Olympics. It says, some may not be born as fortunate as others, but what do you define as fortunate? What do you define as a disability? And clearly, however you define it, these young people don't let it hold them back an inch, and that's inspiring, I think.
It is. No, it's absolutely inspiring. I mean, you always want to watch the races, right? Where you've seen a couple of these where the individual falls down and it's like, oh no,
right.
And then, you either have someone that reaches out, helps them. We love to see things like that. Or even better, when they come all the way from the back and get up front.
Yes.
So, and I think it's something similar when we see a person that we know is facing some physical or whatever challenge.
Right.
And they're just busting it out there. I'm like, they're going at it.
Yes, they are.
It's very, very inspiring.
It is extremely, extremely inspiring. So, again, we want to urge members of the public, if you are able to attend, let me just take a quick look. The events, let's see, what do we have for this week? Let's see, let's go to, tonight, that same bocce ball will take place from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Truman Bodden Sports Complex. So if you're on your way home or you haven't got quite, your plan set, or if you don't want to sit in traffic, if you're headed obviously to the Eastern Districts, well, maybe you might want to stop into the Truman Bodden Sports Complex and check out bocce ball and see firsthand, this lovely game that we just discovered ourselves. And you tell me if our description of the game matched what your eyes saw. Tomorrow, also from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., they return to the Struman-Bodden Sports Complex for the athletics portion, track and field events. On Tuesday, on Wednesday, they have the basketball events. That'll take place at the Arc Camana Bay. That'll take place from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. And then wrapping up the event on the 14th of June. I don't know how many people are going to attend this one because obviously it's taking place during otherwise working hours. But for those of you who may be on flex time or work in an industry where perhaps you have differing hours, maybe free in the morning and have to work in the afternoon or the evening, from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m., you can check out Dragon Bay for the stand-up paddleboarding events. But this is what is taking place as part of the 2025 Special Olympic Games, the 36th annual Special Olympic Games.
Did I hear you say that you're a professional at paddleboarding?
No, I did quite to the contrary.
Oh, okay.
I was noting the fact that they've got paddleboarding as a Special Olympics event. And whilst I certainly don't think I have many disabilities other than the fact that I'm getting old, and my
depends on how you define
my
disability.
body warranty expired when I turned 50. Everything started to break down.
The kill date.
The kill date. Quite right. Exactly. I'm just one great big. Oh, that hurts.
See Austin, I can pull the back of his shirt off. Used before date. This particular date.
That's right. And I'm long past my expiry date, but hey, I'm still ticking around. But
I'm still standing.
But my check engine light has been on for a couple of years, put it that way. But I was saying that I can't do stand-up paddleboarding, so it's even more impressive that it's a Special Olympics sport. So I'm even more impressed by these Special Olympians than I was before I read about it.
Yeah.
I can't do this, so I'm just impressed that they can.
All right.
And at that sort of competitive level. So definitely worth the price of admission. I'm definitely going to try to check it out at Dragon Bay on the 14th. I'd love to see it. And, of course, again, we want to cheer our team on, which is, of course, the whole point behind it all. So 48 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock before we go off to the top of the hour news, brought to you, of course, as always, by our news partner, the BBC. And, of course, before we get into our substantive conversation, which normally kicks off at the top of the hour at 5 o'clock, I got a little bit of a joke for you.
Yeah, a bit of a joke, right?
A bit of a joke. Today's kind of a slow good news day.
So you think that you have a good joke as a replacement?
I think I have a pretty good one. It's a clean one, so it's G-rated. Everyone can certainly tune in for this one.
I hope this doesn't come across like the clownfish.
No.
Remember in Finding Nemo?
Nothing like that at all.
You're
Nothing like that at all.
You're supposed to be good at jokes.
You're a clownfish. Why are you not funny?
I never knew my father. You ever saw that?
I love it, yes.
Hey, if you have kids.
Finding Nemo, Finding Dora.
I watched The Lion King like 38 times.
Oh, my
and I knew all the lines.
I believe it.
Listen. And there's a lovely bunch of coconuts. It's what happens when you have kids. You can't help it.
You're so right. You are so right. And I miss that immensely.
Run, Simba, run.
Right. Timon and Pumbaa.
Oh, yeah, that was good, right?
Yes, those guys.
He thought that a star was, he says, I thought it was just a big ball of gas. Everything is gas with you, Pumbaa. I told you I knew the lines, Austin. Do not challenge me.
As you said before, you threatened earlier on, I'm never going to lie to you, Austin.
I'm not going to lie to you. If I don't know it, I don't know it.
He's proven it to you, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.
Okay.
I miss going to Disney premieres with my son when he was a lot younger. He turns 20 in August, if you can imagine that. And obviously I know you can because you've got 3 grown girls. And again, I remember them when they were a lot smaller.
A little bit smaller.
And a lot younger as well.
Speaking of that.
But time does fly very quickly.
I did see a picture. Do you know that there's a cartoon out called Ellio?
No, I did not.
Apparently so. I got to go check this out. Not with 2 L's, though.
Really?
Yeah, but I got to check this out.
They probably pronounce it
I mean, it's
Ellio.
probably a movie about me.
Ellio. It's
That's what it is?
appearing on Telemundo. And it's in Espanol.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see. Vamos a la película. Oh.
See, there you go. That's probably the voice.
Uh-huh.
I often have to remind myself that you are fluent in Spanish. Another fantastic trait and skill. You're just a master of so many different things.
And a couple of words in a few other languages, which is why I was going to say, I think the word is an Italian word. I think it's actually boche.
Boche. Well, I
Would
think
be my
bocce.
gamble.
So, again, that's the first trivia moment. 745-2626. Is it bocce ball or is it boche ball?
Well, Italian would be boche, I think.
Okay. Well, again, I
All part of that romantic language.
I stand to be
Latin.
corrected.
So
I think
either
I'm
way,
right.
drum roll.
Drum roll. Yes. So humor.
You're going to give us a joke.
Yes. This is the joke called Always Finding Fault. An elderly man is in a hospital with his wife of 55 years sitting at his bedside. Is that you, Ethel? At my side again, he whispered. Yes, dear, she answered with love in her voice. He softly said to her, Ethel, you remember years ago when I was in the Veterans Hospital? You were with me then. You were with me now when we lost everything in a fire. And Ethel, when we were poor, you stuck with me then too. The man sighed with a look of sincerity in his eyes and looked at his wife, Ethel, and said, I tell you, Ethel, you're bad luck. Isn't that a good one? I thought it was a terrific one.
That definitely had a twist on it.
You're just not expecting that curveball to come at you.
That is a good one.
Well, there you go.
That's not bad, Mr.
That's
Harris.
not a bad
You know,
joke, I agree. It's not mine. I kind of stole it from someone, a good friend of mine, but
You mean borrowed?
borrowed. That's right. I'm not a thief in any language. But I told him that I liked it so much that we can certainly expect to hear it again. So, Mr. Harold, if you got your ears on, there it is. I kept my word.
Well, here's how we know it's not theft, because theft is defined as dishonest appropriation of private property with the intention to permanently deprive. And I'm pretty sure if your friend came back for that joke, you'd be happy to give it back.
Wow.
I've used it already. But no, but that's a pretty good one, Austin.
I thought it was a very good one as well.
And saying that, I should be armed with the information, but I'm not entirely armed with it. But it does remind me of something. I read a book many moons ago.
Yes.
And it was by Roger Dawson. And he actually said that there was 5 different types of jokes.
Uh-huh.
All jokes can be boiled down to 5 different types of jokes. You know, like your basic, your vowels. And I don't remember all of them, but one is a pun, one is an exaggeration, and one is a surprise. Now, what the other 2 are right now eludes me, right? But I'm going to look that up because that's going to bother me now. That's going to tickle my brain.
You're going to have to Google that during the break.
Yeah, but it's always like a pun, an exaggeration of something, and then you have that surprise. And that's one of those surprise ones, obviously. It's a twist because you're kind of thinking, like,
this is going to be a romantic, funny joke, a feel-good one.
Well, it was starting to remind me of that one where, you know, I got to admit to you, I slept with your sister, Mary. And then she goes, I know. That's why I killed you. It was starting to remind me of one of those. Sorry if I changed. Sorry if I changed the rating a little bit.
Yes.
Did I change the rating?
You changed the rating, and I think it was, sort of,
PG-ish.
A preacher dies, and
anyway, you get the idea. So I'm sorry if I changed the rating on you and carried it totally from G, but that's what it was starting to remind me of.
Being true to form in all things.
And then you just twisted it on me. So very good joke, Austin.
Thank you very much. Hopefully
it didn't flop.
Hopefully it didn't.
Hold on. It deserves something. Here.
There we go. I missed those sound effects.
That's perfect, Austin. Very good.
Thank you very much. So there you go. When the good news is slow or few and far between, as it was today, again, I sort of scanned the headlines and I was able to pull out one bit of, I think, glowing bit of good news. That was the Special Olympics, but I couldn't find anything else. So we had to throw a little bit of humor in there. 55 minutes past the hour. 4 o'clock is the time in studios, giving us just over 4 minutes before we have to wrap it up today. And we will end on the not so good news, but certainly an informative one. in the ongoing search for missing journalist, our good friend Andrell Harris. We learned today that the search mission has now officially transitioned to a recovery operation, according to a press release issued by the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service. Mr. Harris was last seen at about 9:30 p.m. on Tuesday, the 3rd of June, walking south along Pedro Castle Road and up to and including on Sunday, the 8th of June. Emergency agencies had coordinated multiple ground, aerial, and coastal searches in the Pedro Castle area, as well as the surrounding seaside. I'm not sure if they got as far down as South Sound, but I saw some of the marine traffic over the weekend, and there was also, of course, the aerial traffic that I was noting on Friday. During the search efforts on Saturday and Sunday, several items were recovered, including a pair of trousers and a cell phone that were said to be linked to Mr. Harris, according to the RCIPS press release. The phone that was retrieved in the morning is apparently now being examined by forensic specialists. There were some troubling information that also appeared on social media over the weekend. One such social media post that I noted included, I can only put it this way, an alleged letter that was attributed to Mr. Harris's mother that frankly made some troubling claims. However, as we have not yet confirmed the authenticity of this letter and that it in fact did come from his mother, we won't read it, nor really will we arguably speculate on what is contained in the letter, just simply out of an abundance of caution, but more so out of respect for the family. Harris was last seen wearing a dark blue shirt with rolled sleeves and black pants. He was described as being 5'9" tall, slim with a dark brown complexion and neatly kept dreadlocks. Anyone with information on his whereabouts are urged to call 911 or the Bordentown Police Station on 947-2220. But again, as we stated at the beginning, with almost a week going by and given the comprehensive nature of the search operation, we are now transitioned from search to recovery. That obviously suggests that authorities do not have any hopes of perhaps now finding Mr. Harris alive, if they do find him at all. But as always, our prayers, our thoughts go out to the family, but also to the authorities. I know Hazard Management came in. I know the Baptist Church came in and allowed, for sort of a temporary HQ for emergency responders. Want to thank the countless volunteers from the community who stepped up, in particular the boat owners over the weekend and today that were called out. They called, and the police made the call, and the public answered that call. So we thank them and everyone who was involved in this search. And again, we pray for the family at this time. We're going to pause, take a short commercial break, but keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk still to come on Straight Talk on Bobo FM.
Bobo. How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News, the world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to top shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. President Trump has said he'll deploy up to 700 Marines to Los Angeles following a third day of clashes between protesters and security forces over immigration raids. The administration said the Marines would help protect federal agents and buildings until more National Guard troops can arrive. Earlier, the Attorney General in California filed a lawsuit against the president for deploying the National Guard without the governor's permission. Here's Sarah Smith.
President Trump has labelled protesters in Los Angeles as violent and destructive as he's defended his controversial decision to deploy the National Guard to quell demonstrations, saying if he had not done so, LA would have been completely obliterated. The California governor, Democrat Gavin Newsom, has filed a lawsuit against President Trump for sending in these troops without his authorization, saying the actions breached the U.S. Constitution and inflamed what had been small local protests. Mr. Newsom's also rejected Donald Trump's suggestion that he should be arrested, saying this threat was an unmistakable step towards authoritarianism.
Palestinians in the Gaza Strip say they've been fired on once again while on their way to an aid distribution site run by the US Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Witnesses said that they'd also been attacked by Palestinian gunmen. From Jerusalem, Sebastian Usher.
Almost every day that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has been in operation, there have been deadly incidents near one or other. What's different about the incident today in Rafah is that people at the scene have said that Palestinian gunmen shot at them as well as the Israeli military. They said the gunmen appeared to be allied with the IDF as they were operating near them and moved back into an Israeli military zone. The exact circumstances have not been verified, but it follows a recent acknowledgement by the Israeli Prime Minister that Israel has been supporting local clans in Gaza.
There's been international condemnation of Israel's interception of a ship which tried to break the aid blockade of the Gaza Strip. President Macron called Israel's move shameful and scandalous. Half the 12 activists on board are French. Police in Sri Lanka have arrested the prison's chief over the release of a convicted financial fraudster under the cover of an amnesty. The president's office ordered an investigation. Here's Anbarasana Tarajan.
The scandal over the release of a financial fraudster has dominated Sri Lanka's media for the past week. The convict was serving a 6-month sentence for a financial scam. It's not immediately clear how his name found its way onto the list of nearly 400 prisoners given presidential amnesty to mark the Buddhist festival of Vesak. The Commissioner General of Prisons, Tushara Upuldaniya, was first suspended, then arrested, amid a probe on the illegal release of the convict. Another prison official is already in custody over the same incident.
BBC News. The head of NATO, Mark Rutte, has warned that Russia could be ready to use military force against a member of the alliance within 5 years. Speaking in London, he called on NATO countries to significantly increase defence spending to 5% of GDP to fund a quantum leap in their collective defence. Mr. Rutte said that included boosting air and missile defences 5-fold and obtaining thousands more tanks and armoured vehicles and shells. Sub-Saharan Africa now has the world's largest population of Christians, surpassing Europe for the first time. The Pew Research Centre said in a new report that as of 2020, 30% of Christians lived in Sub-Saharan Africa versus 22% in Europe. They explained the shift was caused by a decline in religious support in Europe and a high birth rate in Africa. Here's Lebo Diseko.
Christians are still the world's largest religious group, but they are shrinking as a share of the global population. Sub-Saharan Africa is the one region of the world which showed the opposite, with an increase of 0.3% between 2010 and 2020. The centre of Christianity has been moving southwards towards the continent for some time. Numbers of people leaving religion altogether tended to be higher in countries that were more developed.
The French President Emmanuel Macron, who's hosting a global summit on the oceans, says a treaty to protect international waters is on track for ratification in January. He said this would finally give the world an international framework to regulate and administer the high seas. One of Britain's most successful thriller writers, Frederick Forsyth, has died aged 86. The author of The Day of the Jackal and The Odessa File drew on his experience as a journalist. He eventually admitted he had also worked for MI6, Britain's external spy agency. BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your hosts, Ellio Solomon and myself, Austin Harris. And welcome to this Monday edition of the program that is broadcast live on your radio dial at 103.1 FM and simulcasting live over YouTube and Facebook. Both at our own Straight Talk radio show page as well as on the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page as well. Wherever you choose to stream us in, as always, this program is for you. We are in a open mic Monday to start off a brand new week. The phone lines are open at 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number by dialing 928-2562. And from there, either sharing a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. Moving on to some of our substantive bits of discussion, again, plucked straight from the headlines that we think are news items that are important to mention. We see in today's Compass, Cayman proves doubters wrong in World Cup qualifier against Honduras. Just very quickly, my friend, a couple of excerpts, really just two paragraphs from the media. The Cayman Islands men's national football team proved a lot of people wrong and left one locally based Honduran supporter saying that they were surprised about the score of Saturday's matchup. The grit and determination of the Cayman men on home soil at the Truman Bodden Sports Complex on Saturday left local supporters impressed with a 1-0 outcome against regional powerhouse and three-time World Cup qualifier Honduras. Now, Ellio, I even read on one social media post over the weekend, persons describing the matchup on Saturday as being a true defensive master class. Mm-hmm. And I almost don't want to say this, but I must admit that I just don't I don't share the same.
You got to repeat that I don't want to say this.
I got to repeat. I really don't want to say this, but as we say on the program, I'll never lie to you, not even when I probably should be lying to you. But I don't share the same enthusiasm as many persons have stated. Certainly, I don't believe it was a game of grit and determination more so than it was a game that sought to ensure that Cayman did not get beaten as badly by Honduras as they did by Bermuda earlier in the week, when Bermuda gave the Cayman team a 5-0 shellacking is the only word that comes to mind for that matchup. Whilst there were a number of quote-unquote challenges that Team Cayman faced before that matchup, and maybe we can talk about some of them, basically you had, 10 players playing back, playing in the defensive role. Obviously, that says to me the team didn't come with the intention to win, but just to avoid getting humiliated. Yes, Honduras is a powerhouse squad. Yes, they are a 3-time World Cup qualifier. Yes, maybe one would say that perhaps our chances of beating them weren't very high to begin with. But, you know, in all games, you anticipate that you show up to win. You know, you show up to play the game. But when we look at the statistics, Honduras maintained possession for 86% of the game, took 31 shots on goal compared to 1 by Cayman. Honduras had 8 of those 31 shots on target, whereas Cayman were never anywhere in threat of being on target. Honduras took the win basically 1-0 with 10 less penalties than Team Cayman. Honduras was charged with 5 penalties and 1 yellow card compared to Cayman's 15 penalties and 2 yellow cards. That, to me, suggests there was significant frustration on the part of the Team Cayman players. Otherwise, why would you be involved in sort of those fracas of penalties and close calls, if you will? But, you know, again, we talked about this on Friday with our guest when Mr. Ernie Gilly Seymour as our special guest on Friday, for those of you who may have been at your preferred watering holes
yes,
instead of tuned into Straight Talk. We had a delightful conversation with Coach Gilly. I thought it was a real come-to-Jesus honest moment about what it's going to take to really build a World Cup qualifying team, and one that, if it doesn't qualify for the World Cup or perform at the level of some of the jurisdictions with a much larger population, clearly it can do a much better job at performing at the global stage than it has in a number of years. Don't get me wrong, there have been a few bright, shining light moments in the, I guess, history of Cayman football, but it's not surprising where the game of football is being overshadowed by swimming as potentially Cayman's national sport. When we see the sort of, well, let's face it, performances that we continue to put out. You know, we can talk about things like the training levels. We can talk about things, as we talked about on Friday, about the lack of leadership. In many cases, you got head coaches both being responsible for technical strategies as well as athleticism and fitness. But at the same token, that same head coach has to go out and put on the fundraising hat and raise money. That same head coach has to book airfare tickets, hotel stays, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the, I think, the big bits of information that we gained on Friday, I think you will agree, is that for us to be successful in the game of football, the Ministry of Sport needs to basically take ownership of this, particularly the national team, and I mean both men's and women's, and sort of, you know, lead from the front, hiring people like the coaching staff to do that, focus on coaching, but hire the key other people to handle logistics and administrative needs and whatnot, hire different people to do those works.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about the biggest elephant in the room in terms of what makes a team a World Cup qualifying team, many people have argued that unlike some of our competitors in other jurisdictions, the athletes, like, for example, in Jamaica, maybe even in Honduras and Bermuda, these players are full-time players. They're paid to train with the national team, whereas in Cayman, most of our players have daytime jobs that they have to train at night. And whilst we, I guess, accepted at face value that was a key distinction, and clearly perhaps suggesting that we needed to, work harder to improve past that stage, Coach Gilly basically said it clearly as a man who spent, his life in this sport.
At least 25 years.
At least, 26 years at the government level, and continues to hold many a record in terms of the domestic league that haven't been matched yet. So as far as an expert guest, you have to work real hard to beat our guest on Friday, which, again, was a delightful conversation. But he, again, proved that myth wrong, saying that you can train a 9-to-5 player to compete on the global stage, but it is simply about training methodology and approach. It's about the skills, not just of the players on the field, but the skills that coaches and technical staff have, just like players have to attend, playing clinics, so too do coaches and technical directors. So it is a very, a high-level professional game. It's a strategic game, but it is no different than, any major sport where, again, you are hiring persons, highly skilled persons, to perform highly skilled tasks and then pass those skills on to the players. So this notion of paying players, and training full-time as opposed to part-time is just an excuse, according to Coach Gilly. He also shared with us some insight as to what it could cost us if we were to accept the notion, even though he debunked it for having any validity. But if we were to pay our players, and which would enable them to, train full time at the national team level, the kind of monies we were looking at on the high end of $5 million really just pales in comparison to what we spend $5, $10, $15 million on in this country on a variety of other projects that perhaps aren't as meaningful.
Just for qualification, so we don't put words in his mouth, it was myself making those calculations, and it was, again, the assumption that we would pay, $60,000 per person, and you get as much as 22 people, that you're really set that you're going to go out there and train and end up with a proper national team.
That's right.
I think Cayman definitely needs to decide, and again, why is this important? I think it's important for the country to know that we have the talent here. That's obvious. And I think, Austin, you know the names better than I do, but the crooks and stuff in terms of the running, or not the running, the swimming.
Yes, Sean Frazier's.
The Fraser. So we clearly have the ability and the capacity to go overseas, compete, and to do very well. And one of the things that I mentioned there was the difference is that's on an individual basis. And that's important to note it, because these persons can go off and train the heck out of it, if you like, and their performance is going to be judged based on what they do. A little bit different in terms of soccer from the perspective that you're playing as a part of a team. So you can go, you can do as much training as you want, but it still doesn't mean that if you put Messi on the Cayman Islands team or another team, that Messi's still going to be Messi, because it's more than one person to be able to get that champion, to be able to score goals. You need a full team working together.
Right.
And I think in terms of, once we know that we have the capacity to do it, the question is, well, why aren't we doing it with soccer? And definitely, I think we've concluded that we really need someone that's going to champion that cause for Cayman. And I think, first of all, a fundamental decision to make is, you want to get into soccer or you don't want to get into soccer. Or maybe you just want to play soccer so a group of people can stay healthy.
Yes.
Maybe that might be a goal. But if you're surely going to make the goal that you want to compete on an international scale, then we should be doing everything that we can to achieve it. That doesn't mean that you're not going to fail, but it should be a real concerted effort. And not to knock the present minister or even trying to knock the previous one, but it's a simple case that I would imagine that whoever, that champion should be the person who is elected to be Minister of Sports.
Mm-hmm.
That should be the person, and again, it can be even combined from a financial and budgetary perspective with tourism, because again, it's sports tourism. It's a good thing for the image of the Cayman Islands, which again boosts tourism as well, right? Like Bob Marley is part of tourism,
right?
Okay,
right.
So, and again, from that perspective, we really need to make up our mind if that's where we want to go. We want to compete in the national scale. I think you need someone to champion that, and it should be the Minister of Sports. So when you do the math, the argument is that you really need ultimately 11 plus players that are prepared and ready and can do what they have to do. And yes, there is the possibility that persons can have a 9 to 5 and still achieve some of those things. But clearly, it would be even better if those persons have nothing else to do but to focus 100% on being the best that they can in terms of soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was raising the argument that when we play one game, another country is playing 43.
Yes.
And I just really don't see that to be apples to apples. Your guys are not going to perform well if you don't give them that chance. And to your point that you made, you talked about the fact that if you're paying them, well, it can be just like any other job. You can put the demands. You need to get up at 5.
Yes.
I'm not asking you. You need to get up at 5 because that's what I pay you to do. I pay you to get up at 5, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and I pay you to run in the ocean. So the bottom line is, just throwing out a figure, $60,000, $5,000 a month is a reasonably decent pay.
Yeah.
You're not going to, You're not going to buy a Lamborghini with it, but you're definitely not going to starve to death.
That's right.
And to do nothing else but to run around, kick a ball, and potentially be a champion that makes you something even more glorious, I think $5,000 a month is reasonable.
Yeah.
And to get 22 people in the room, to put it that way, or on the court, on the field, playing soccer, doing nothing else but working for 4 years. $60,000 each for 4 years to try to to get a champion team in 4 years. You're talking about $6 million, a little bit over 5.28, I think it was.
A year in just salaries.
Well, no, I think
was that 4 years?
That was total.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, I'll just run the math.
Sure.
Glad you raised it.
No, please. I think it's important.
Yeah, let me just look at it. So,
and whilst you're running the totals, one of the other comments that Coach Gilly shared was, whilst we set a total at 60,000 per se as a perhaps
total
subjective salary per player, and that's per player for a total period of 4 years, yeah?
Right. So you're talking if you got 22 players, because you start off with a big number like that, and then that number would continue to, to reduce itself, right? As you start wean. So in other words, somebody goes off, they start selecting the best players that they can find, get the 22 top players.
Yeah.
And you start paying them. And you're paying them $60,000 a year. But in this particular scenario, just to keep the finances easy, you're just going to assume that you're going to pay 22 players all the way for 4 years.
Right.
But in reality, that's not what's going to happen. It's going to shrink a little bit because some of those persons are going to be weeded out. But even if you paid $60,000 per player per annum for 4 years straight, you're looking at about $5.28 million.
That's right. $1.3 million a year just in salaries. And
correct.
When we look at the various expenditure items that we as a country spend on arguably frivolous things, we think $5-6 million over 4 years as an investment in our national team is a drop in the bucket, frankly.
Yeah. It's not that big of an amount. I mean, and I'm pretty sure that somebody can find it. Not that it's just hanging around somewhere. It is money. But I mean, I was just reading today in terms of, the government voting on the $45 million. I mean, $14 million, for example, that's going strictly to financial assistance.
Yes.
You got $8.25 million going for medical care for the indigents. You got $20.54 million for tertiary medical care, local and overseas.
Yes.
And not to diminish that, that's very important.
Sure it is.
But I'm simply saying, from a financial perspective, investing $5 million in someone really championing the cause, is Cayman really going to perform in soccer, as my colleague has mentioned, when you have the person who should be out there mentoring and training, actually having to drop that, put on a hat and, knock on doors and see if they can raise finances? It's like, come on, guys.
Yes.
Cut the crap. Let's decide. What does it say? Crap or get off the pot?
Yes.
It's like, listen, just decide if you want to be in the business or you want to or not.
Yeah, you're right. Decide if football is serious, if you want to develop a national team, if you want to see that national team rise to the level of its maximum capability. And listen, we're not expecting for anybody to walk on the moon. If you can't play or qualify for the World Cup every 4 years, and you're not expecting a team Cayman to actually beat, say, a Brazil or a France or a Germany and become World Cup champions, because, well, let's just face it, it's just never going to happen. But certainly at the CONCACAF level, at regular league levels, but also international and regional games, we should be able to perform better at the sport of football or soccer, depending on what nomenclature you want to give it. When we'll be talking about, again, the $1.3 million per year in salaries, or $5-6 million over a 4-year period. Another point that Coach Gilly shared with us was that's assuming we pay every player a $60,000 a year salary. But as it has been demonstrated in other sports, you have your peak performers. You have
it's tiered,
exactly. It's tiered. You have your Sean Frasers, your Jordan Crooks, persons that are setting not only national but collegiate and even some cases world records with their performance. These are your top tier. Then you have your middle or intermediary tier, and then you have your entry level. So maybe not every player can count on a $60,000 a year paycheck, but certainly it provides that sort of stepping stone to say, listen, you get paid based on your performance, and thank you for mentioning it, because now we're paying our players, then we can expect greater things from them and less excuses. So
proper job description, you can hold them accountable. And speaking about holding accountable, I think it's the same thing in terms of our elected officials. You know, the reality of it is, and I've said this numerous times, that you have ministers, as far as I'm concerned, with too many portfolios. I mean, are you really able to effectively bring about real change having 4 or 5 different portfolios under you? I mean, you could really get one individual taking on one of those portfolios. Let's just say sports. If you really wanted to make massive changes, just that itself could be your portfolio.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of things to do. And you have to really ask yourself the question, can really one person do that? Can you really effectively lead all of those portfolios? I mean, it sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the minister of the rah-rah and the re-re, and don't forget the blah-blah.
That's right.
But
how effective
is that really going to be?
Absolutely.
And those are all questions that we need to have. But at the same time, from an accountability perspective, that triggered that particular comment was, where is the accountability? Yeah. Where is it that you're going to say, Minister of Sports, Minister of Health, whatever, where are the targets?
Right.
Like, you know, I'm the Minister of Health, and here's what I'm finding. I'm finding 86% of people in this scenario in 33, and here's what I'm doing, and here's how it's changed after 2, 3, 4 years.
Yes.
You know? Like I long to see even a sign put up on light poles that's just branding in my mind that I should eat more fruits and vegetables.
Right.
You know, like it wouldn't really hurt.
Yeah. No.
You know, and I don't think it would cost too much either.
No.
You know, I think going about, and I think to this government's kudos as well, I think it might have even been Mr. Rutter. I could be misappropriating the credit, but where are we in terms of saying, why is the stamp duty the same on junk food as it is for good food,
right,
or healthy food?
Right.
You know, come on, let's really show what you're doing. You need somebody really working their butt off and saying, I've been discussing this for the last 100 days, and we have a plan. And we're going to do it, and then we're going to measure it like a real project and see whether we're having success or not. And I just, unfortunately, we're not getting that. I can tell you plain and straight, you're not getting that. That's not to knock that you haven't gotten some good things and you had some great ministers pass through, but we're just not getting that. No. And you see it particularly in areas like this national team. I'm not going to knock Caymanians because I am seeing at the end of the day where we have persons that are going away and competing on the world stage and doing very well. Mm-hmm. And I have to believe that we have the same potential in terms of our soccer. But we have to take it serious because I'm pretty sure you could have Pelé on the Cayman team. It doesn't mean Pelé is going to be the same Pelé.
Yeah.
Because it's a team sport. It's not about how hard Pelé works. It's about how hard the team works and whether they can perform, etc. So let's really take it serious and get out there and do something. If not, then stop entering in.
Yeah, give it up.
You're wasting time.
You are. Well, one writer says you can say what you want, but you can't have amateurs playing against professionals and expecting a different approach to the game. I, for one, do not agree with Coach Gillies' comments that amateurs can get their endurance just by working out. It's game time against other professionals that will get you football fit. And, oh, by the way, please tell Ellio to call it football and not soccer. Well, again, tomato, however you define it, U.S. call it soccer.
Well, let me just say that I completely agree. It should be football. It should be football is play with your foot, and American football is play with your hands. I completely agree with you, but if you could sort it out with America, I would be greatly. Don't point it at me.
Yes.
This is the same thing I had.
You're just repeating what you're told.
I had the Department of Environment when I was elected coming to me. How much time we have?
10 seconds. We'll pick it up when you come back. We have to pause, take a short commercial break, but keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk coming up next on Bobo FM.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
Insurance matters. It gives you the confidence to live life as you should, knowing you're protected. As a leading local insurer for over 25 years, Island Heritage has a consistent track record of providing best-in-class customer service with quick and efficient claims processing. This means insurance you can rely on when you need it most. The Island Heritage Way. Visit us online at islandheritageinsurance.com today to learn more about our home, contents, motor, marine, and commercial insurance products. Go on and live your life. With Island Heritage, you can.
With you in mind, we have your style. Find what you need down every aisle. You want saving, selection, and quality. That's why we're your home store. Home store. The way to make a home. The way to make a home.
We all work hard to one day buy the house of our dreams. Why wouldn't you protect it? With Saxon, you now have the option to get a home insurance quote online. Avoid the waiting in lines and the traffic. Simply log on to saxon.ky and click to get a quote to get started. At Saxon, we pride ourselves on providing our customers with excellent customer service and convenience. So what are you waiting for? Visit saxon.ky today from the comfort of your home or office to get your quote and protect the things you love. Saxon. Smart insurance.
At Priced Right, spending less on everyday products is easy.
Spend less on office supplies, tools, and automotive products.
Spend less on groceries, fresh produce, and meat.
Spend less on electronics, TVs, and speakers.
Spend less on home furnishings, beauty products, and apparel.
At Priced Right, we believe you can live better for less.
To start saving, visit us at the Airport Center in Georgetown or at Republic's Plaza in West Bay.
For more info, visit pricedright.ky. Live better for less at Priced Right.
Looking for TVs, electronics, sound systems, speakers, gaming consoles, games, and smart home gadgets? Shop Cost You Less.
Looking for housewares, small appliances, fans, mini fridges, and cooling? Shop Cost You Less.
Looking for baby supplies, toys and games, pet supplies, cleaning supplies, and auto supplies? Shop Cost You Less.
Looking for quality produce, grass-fed meats, and groceries? You guessed it. Shop Cost You Less.
Cost You Less is your destination for everything you need on island. Cost You Less. Everyday low prices on items that matter to you.
Drinking water is vital to our health. At Cayman Water, we use reverse osmosis desalination to ensure safe drinking water. A semi-permeable membrane allows fresh water to pass through, blocking out contaminants. Then, we finish with a post-treatment process and conduct frequent extensive testing to ensure that you get healthy drinking water with an average pH of 7. Not only is water out of your tap safe to drink, it's approximately 400 times less expensive than bottled water. Help to reduce plastics and save our planet. Cayman Water cares. Learn more at caymanwater.com.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, Cayman, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. 33 minutes past the hour, 5 o'clock is the time in studios as we continue this Open Mic Monday here on the program. The phone lines are open at 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. We just wrapped up, obviously, our sort of dissection, if you will, on the World Cup qualifying matches that ended for Team Cayman on Saturday at the Truman Bodden Sports Complex with a 1-0 defeat at the hands of Honduras, a powerhouse within the region. And while some are certainly expressing their fact that they were impressed by the Team Cayman's performance, unfortunately, we're
not standing in that line.
We are not standing in that line. And again, it brings us no pleasure to offer up what we consider constructive criticism on the topic. Far be it from us to, take any joy in doing so. But as my colleague has stated, it's time to get serious about the game of football at the national level here in the Cayman Islands. The sport needs a leader. The head coach and technical director cannot simply wear multiple hats and be expected to be responsible for everything. We need the Minister of Sports and the Ministry of Sports to step in and take a leadership role and decide once and for all Are we serious about the game of football at the national team level? If we are not, well, there are plenty of other sports that are happy to take the lead, not least of which is swimming, which, again, last year there was an article that appeared in the media that threatened to suggest that swimming might take over as the country's national sport over football, which, of course, I remember that story, and it enraged a lot of people across the community. But, again, as uncomfortable as it may be, we've got the likes of, Jordan Crooks, and before him, brothers Sean and Justin Frazier, doing remarkable things. Don't forget Jillian Crooks as well, doing remarkable things at the swimming level. And, hey, it's hard to compare that performance, and you ask yourself, then what is missing on the football side?
I personally don't see what anyone's going to get upset about in terms of saying that swimming might be the one. After all, we're a small island surrounded by water.
Right.
It sounds pretty fitting to me. Yeah. But the difference between a gold nugget and a ring, Austin, is just somebody actually seeing the potential.
Yeah.
Okay? And actually doing something about it. And so in terms of our players, I'm not going to knock the players. I think the same thing as the Crooks, the same thing as the Frasers. We have lots of gold nuggets there. It really takes somebody at the end of the day to have a vision to see what it can be and to spend the time and the money to shape it. And like I said, we really just need to make up our minds what we want to do and move forward. If you want to just be on the health side, I'm totally for that. But then don't put them on the world stage, okay? Right. But if you want to put those potential champions on the world to face the world, I really don't think that's a big investment that we're putting in our people. There's nothing to scream about. On the person saying about calling it soccer, I'm going to take that as I'm assuming it was meant jovially. I'm going to take it that way. Yeah. But I just want to say, I want to ask you, speak to America about that.
Right.
Okay, because I didn't start that problem. I always grew up hearing it was football, and it makes perfect sense to me that it should be football. But it reminds me of a discussion I had with DOE when I was elected. It's like, we got to cut down all this fishing. And we're talking about the impact of the Cayman Islands on the fishing arena. And it just, I hear that. It just reminds me of these Aesop fables with the fly landing on the horn of the bull. And sorry to be a bit of an inconvenience to you, but don't worry, I should be gone very soon. It's like, I didn't even notice you were there. Right. And the bottom line is America consumes 18.8 million pounds of fish per day. I'm like, sorry, guys. I think everybody fishing in Cayman wouldn't even catch 18.8 million pounds. But either way,
scratching the surface.
My point is, yes, that's the influence of America. At the end of the day, if you say football, nobody's going to know what you're talking about. That's I try to make sure and do this distinction.
Indeed. Well, when we talk about football, certainly we also talked about what sort of benefits can the Cayman Islands derive from the game of football. And Ellio mentioned both in Friday's discussion and again here this evening that sports tourism is a big draw, and that brings a lot of people to our country. That means revenue, that means job, that means opportunity for the country. We need only look at sports like beach volleyball, the Norseca beach volleyball, and the attention we get from that. Obviously swimming continues to draw the crowds.
And that's why I think the funding can be a cross-ministry thing. It can be sports and tourism.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of room to work in this. And to your point, we can spread those expenses across multiple ministries because there is a benefit to be derived.
Right.
Speaking of sports tourism, a writer to the program says, good evening, Austin and Ellio. Capitalizing on our natural assets can also lend to our tourism product. The owners of the pickleball court, for example, have already started this, and Cayman has hosted a regional tournament where many of the Caribbean nations came here to play. It was very well organized, and hotels were full during the long weekend. Cayman should host more sporting events, and it could help boost tourism as well, and definitely help to get our countries supporting our national teams as well. So I think there's a valuable point there. Not only will spectators have one other event to add to their calendars, we can come out and show our national pride, again, an expression of national identity through sport, but also, of course, by growing our stayover tourism, again, with numbers being supported by sporting tourism events, bringing persons to the Cayman Islands and learning about the country. Some may be coming to the country for the first time, and oftentimes it's always that first impression that creates those return visitors. So
And
yes.
I'm glad you raised that. And just to insert really quickly, one of the things I mentioned when I was, on one of the panels at the Chamber of Commerce Forum is that you need to move away from Cayman being this sort of purely beach-centric tourism product. Like everything is just being built on 7 Mile Beach. And there's an opportunity there, like you're talking about, someone mentioned about the pickleball.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other opportunities. We had this digital nomads. I think it was started under your administration, right?
Correct.
It's like, what was it? It was bringing like 100 and something thousand people or whatever. It's like, why does that stop? Why was that allowed to expire? I don't get it.
Yeah. No,
so you want all these different things, because when we talk about diversification from the airport perspective, to say we should be able to take the transatlantic flights and we should be able to take flights from South Central America, whatever. Well, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Diversifying the product, not just in terms of transportation and country-wise, but also diversification from a perspective of what is the centric. In this particular case, sports is one.
Yes.
The one that started during COVID under your administration would have been the digital side of things. Those persons that want to be able to travel and kind of work from wherever. Everywhere is my office.
Yes.
And again, these are the sort of things that we need to do. So again, from the football perspective, those are the sort of potentials that we have. And it's good to hear that's being supported in terms of the possibilities by what's already happening with the pickleball.
No, absolutely, 100%. You mentioned first of all, just in terms of our discussion on football, again, if you missed Friday's show, you really missed a doozy of a conversation. It was as we like to say, a good old-fashioned, honest, come-to-Jesus conversation that was a Caymanian on Caymanian conversation. Mm-hmm. A Caymanian head coach, somebody who spent his entire lifetime in the sport of football, 26 years at the executive or national level, working with the government level, but arguably his entire life, both as a player and as a head coach and technical director. Coach Ernie Gilly-Seymour was our guest on Friday. Delightful conversation. If you missed any part of it or missed the show at all, you can still log on to YouTube and check out our archive. Just use the keyword Straight Talk Radio Show, and you can find our link there on YouTube.
Or Facebook.
Or Facebook, for that matter. I think on YouTube, though, the archive goes back about 1, maybe 2 weeks. And then, of course, it spins over so that we stay as current as possible. But if you missed it, check it out. If you still can't find the link, give us a call. Send us a quick message on WhatsApp, 928-2562, and we'll shorten your journey by sending you the link to Friday's program, should you wish to catch that which you missed. And let that be a lesson to you. You can hold off on your favorite watering hole just a little bit on Friday.
A little bit longer.
Just a little bit longer.
So what we have to do now is work with the bar, see if we can get the happy hour to start at 6:30. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying.
Don't start too early.
Yeah, don't start too early. Let them wait a little bit. Most of the people are in traffic anyway.
Hey, we're doing this for you.
We're doing this for you. Exactly. And then, of course, we can work in conjunction with the police. So we say, listen, here are about 1,500 people going drinking. These are the places they're going to. So these are the places where you need to post off on Fridays and Saturdays. Again, so it should come as no surprise that if you're going to go drinking, you're going to pass through a police roadblock.
It would probably be easier for us to just simply put some radios at the bars, Austin. What do you think?
You know what? You're brilliant, buddy. You're brilliant. We're going to
much easier to pull that one off.
Much easier. Whilst Friday we had a conversation with Coach Gilly, we are hoping to bring a part 2 to our ongoing conversation on what does it take to build a World Cup qualifying team in the Cayman Islands. We're starting with people in the grassroots. Coach Gilly was our first. We're hoping to have a set of guests here in studios on Wednesday so we can examine this same question from the grassroots level and then grow from there, hopefully by inviting persons from the Cayman Islands Football Association as our guests to sort of recap what has come from the grassroots, from person who played the game for a number of years, persons who have led the game for a number of years, and then see what our quote-unquote executive branch of the game of football have to say to some of those recommendations, whether they agree, disagree.
To see where the ball rolls off.
To see where the ball rolls, exactly. Pardon the pun, indeed.
Yeah.
So keep it locked. Of course, we'll share details on that, but we're looking at Wednesday to have our second part in a series of discussions as it relates to the game of football, particularly at the national team level, and what does it take to build a World Cup level team here in the Cayman Islands? What are we doing wrong, and how can we do it better, basically, is our plan. And we're going to do that by talking to the people who know it best. And as always, bringing that information to you, our listening audience, live and direct in Dolby, what is it? 5K, 20K, 120K surround sound. Yes, you know it. There it is. Exactly. What is it? I see another WhatsApp message before we move on from this topic. Let me just check it. You're wondering why am I looking at my phone and not my computer? The WhatsApp desktop version is being problematic today, so I have to grab the phone.
Boy, challenges.
It says, it would be great to hear from Jordan Crooks if he is available to talk, because it's not all about football. Well, that's what we're saying. I mean, obviously, we will certainly reach out and embrace all of our sports. Jordan Crooks, Jillian Crooks. The problem with these key Tier 1 athletes is that they're in university. You know, whilst, of course, the summer vacation's coming up, if they're coming back to home, and certainly we can, create a connect, we will definitely reach out and, hear from some of these high-performing athletes who continue to put the Cayman Islands on the map. And I thank the listener for that recommendation. It is certainly something that, our minds are thinking further down the road on. But in this instance, obviously, starting with football from the standpoint of, here's what we could do. Well, here's what we are doing. Here's what we could do. Are we serious about it? And if we're not, well, for the Minister of Sport, one less thing to worry about. Let's move on to the next sport. And again, have an honest, come-to-Jesus conversation as to what are our expectations and what can we actually achieve.
Yeah, might have to reach out to the minister, too.
Yeah, we certainly will.
The new one.
The new one. Well, the new one, not the new one. The Honorable Isaac Rankin is the Minister of Sport this time around.
Was he Minister of Sports before?
Well, he was, again, remember, there were many changes under the last administration, and he picked it up.
Be nice, Austin.
So he got it for a short term, and now we got it for a long term. I think his treading water and sort of his initiation has expired, and now he can certainly face the tough questions, having the experience to boot. And when we get to it, we will certainly seek to invite the minister to come on the show and discuss what some of our guests have helped us sort of iron out in terms of what are some of the key areas, what are some of the delicate aspects of this conversation that we're uncomfortable with addressing, what are the elephants in the room, but clearly, the tangible factors that mean the difference between success and failure. So, as always, that is our plan. And again, on Wednesday, we hope to present part 2 in our series of discussion. What does it take to develop a World Cup qualifying team here in the Cayman Islands? Now, you mentioned, of course, when we were discussing what would be a drop in the bucket in terms of if we were to pay our amateur team Cayman so they can play football, 5-7 days a week all year round and not have to worry about a day job as well as training for the national team level. You talked about, again, $5 million over 4 years times 22 players. Again, you don't have to pay everybody the same price, the same salary, but you get the point. $5 million over 4 years is a drop in the bucket. When we compare it, and again, Ellio raised this earlier on, in a decision that was taken on Friday as part of an emergency session of Finance Committee in the Parliament of the Cayman Islands, as we await, obviously, the National Coalition for Caymanian Government presenting their strategic policy statement and, of course, their budget for the next 2 years. We understand they went to Parliament on Friday for an emergency session to approve some $45 million in new spending. And just before we get on to the details of that $45 million, we also were informed that there may be a meeting of Parliament as early as the end of this month, though it will not be the presentation of the strategic policy statement, but there will be a meeting specifically to pass a number of important amendments, again, largely focusing in areas of financial services. But we understand there is a meeting of Parliament scheduled for the end of June when we have a firm date from, obviously, those ministers and members of the opposition or other MPs who can confirm it, and, of course, reaching out to the Speaker himself. Once we have a confirmed date, we'll share those details with you. But on Friday, the government of the Cayman Islands called an emergency session of Finance Committee to approve $45 million in new welfare funding after it emerged it would be unable to meet some of its financial obligations starting next month without a fresh cash injection. The money will cover healthcare costs for people who don't have sufficient insurance or no insurance at all, as well as other financial assistance needs, including persons perhaps on NAU rental assistance, school lunches, utility assistance, etc. Finance Minister, the Honourable Ralston Anglin, said that without the additional money, which again had to be approved in Parliament, Cabinet does have certain powers, but when it comes time to spending the public purse, those decisions have to be taken to Parliament for approval, as was the case in Finance Committee on Friday. Minister Anglin stating that without the additional money being approved, government would have been unable to pay rental assistance or fund other financial aid programs for the next month. There are currently some 1,700 families that rely on those payments. I just want to stick a pin there. Whilst the news says 1,700 families, when we consider the average family nucleus consists of 4 people, we're talking about as much as over 6,000 people or 6,800 Caymanians being impacted by either the financial assistance or the overseas tertiary care and health insurance matters. The funding bill approved after an emergency finance committee session on Friday includes, again, to recap what Ellio said earlier, $14 million in financial assistance monies, $8.25 million for medical care for indigents, and $20.54 million for tertiary medical care locally and overseas. Now, this meeting was not without its own controversies. And whilst the opposition may have arguably been quiet under the last administration, this opposition is being anything but, led mostly by the new deputy leader of the opposition, the former Minister of Tourism, the former Deputy Premier, now acclimating to his role in the opposition, talking about our friend, the Honourable Kenneth Bryan, basically taking the government to task over the budget allocations and suggesting that, basically the budget that was first proposed and presented for these numbers simply didn't reflect the real state of funding that was needed. He particularly charged the Premier, the Honourable Andre Ebanks, for saying that who was responsible specifically for the Ministry of Community Affairs, which dealt with things like the financial assistance bill, which deals with departments like the Needs Assessment Unit and others. He charged as to why the budget did not include the real figures in terms of the expected real expenditure for these services. You've heard me state, you've heard Ellio state, I believe, on this program time and time again, there are many budget line items that are understated when the budget is presented, simply on the basis that there is an accepted protocol, i.e. standard, that the first challenge is balancing the budget, and if they were to perhaps include the real costs for much of the services in demand, we would never get a balanced budget to take to the House before the 31st of December, as is required by the Public Management and Finance Law. But oftentimes what is done is the budget presents what we think is needed to take us through the short to medium term, with the expectation that parliamentarians will go back to Finance Committee asking for additional supplementary funding. And really, who can refuse, asking for more monies to support things such as overseas medical, tertiary medical care, medical insurance for indigent persons, or financial assistance, otherwise known as welfare payments, to deal with families in need. Nobody is ever going to say no to those items, and that is why it is very much par for the course that the budget says one thing, and later in the year we go back for ask for extra money. This is something that even in Finance Committee on Friday, the Premier acknowledged is par for the course. He is quoted in the media as saying, and I quote, "The Premier suggested that he had agreed to take a significant cut from his ministry in order to facilitate a balanced budget at the urging of other cabinet members, which, again, we remind you, included Kenneth Bryan at the time, when Kenneth Bryan and Andre Ebanks were members of the same cabinet. He said the advice was to take the cut for financial assistance than other non-essential items because MPs are unlikely to ever turn down subsequent supplementary funding requests for something like financial assistance or health care. So there you have it. You have your premier acknowledging what we have just stated, is that when it is budget time, you have to sort of look at it, with two sets of eyes. Yes, it's close to reality, but it doesn't really match the real spending, the real costs associated with services such as health insurance, such as overseas medical tertiary care, and certainly as it relates to financial assistance. There's always more need than the budget originally allocated for, but government has that sort of escape tunnel that says they can always go back and ask for more money.
Yeah, well, I think that is definitely something that's worthy of more discussion, but I think my clock here tells me 5:55. How much time do we have? Just about 3 minutes.
I think 3 minutes is a good opportunity to at least take a bite out of it.
I can take a bite at it. But, this is very important, and I noticed that there were a couple of comments, or at least one that was on the Compass website, where there were criticisms, first of all, against the deputy leader of the opposition, Mr. Kenneth Bryan, basically, again, saying kind of like, shut up, blah, 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 whatever. And again, this is not about a protection for Mr. Bryan. I have one or two critiques for him, and I know he'll be coming back here in the program. I'll share those with him then. But you have to understand that the opposition, as they say, opposition must have its say and the government will have its way. But it is very, very important that your opposition isn't silent.
That's right.
You don't want them to be destructive. But your opposition, just like the media, is to be able to reveal the truth. They are working on your behalf. That's why you pay them as well. They actually work on your behalf, and they keep the government in check. My colleague mentioned that this had to go to Parliament for approval. Well, why does it have to go to Parliament for approval? Why doesn't Cabinet just go ahead and approve it? Well, there's a process. There's a process that says if you're going to go ahead and get this money, etc., I want to have my watchdogs watching you as well, and give them an opportunity to comment and highlight things. This is a very, very important process, and I just want to say that amongst other things so that we don't, belittle in any way when we hear the dogs barking. The dogs barking is very important. When we hear dogs barking, unless we have a crazy dog that barks at the moon, it probably means something is going on outside, and you should check it out.
Yeah.
And there's actually businesses, for example, that pays thieves to help them protect their business from thieves.
Yes.
So whatever it is, I would encourage you, and not that anyone here is a thief, I'd make that clarity, but at the end of the day, we need those opposition members. We need, at the end of the day, the media to make sure that you're keeping people in check as well. And everybody's going to have their say in that regard, and so should you. But I do want to, another time, if not today, another day, we can discuss a little bit more about this process, because let's be clear on this. If your electrical bill is $1,000, and in order for your budget to be approved, you have to say to your wife, you have to say to your husband, well, the budget for the electricity is only $700.
Yeah.
It means you don't have enough money, okay? So let's put that in good common parlance. It means you do not have enough money to pay the bills. You're kind of broke. And so we need to discuss it, if not today, another day, as exactly what's happening in government and probably some of the things we could or should do about it.
Indeed. It is 58 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock, and we do have to pause, check in with our top of the hour news, brought to you by our news partners, the BBC. But the phone lines continue to be open at 745-2626 when we return. If you have any questions as it relates to the budget process, Finance Committee or otherwise, we'd be happy to listen to it. But when we come back, we take on the environment when Straight Talk returns on Bobo FM.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Swanson was impressed. He said, this is the girl I want.
First, today's news.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. President Trump has announced he'll deploy up to 700 Marines to Los Angeles following a third day of clashes between protesters and security forces over immigration raids. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, said the move is deranged and un-American. Earlier, the Attorney General in California filed a lawsuit against the president for deploying the National Guard without the governor's permission. Anthony Zerker is in Washington.
We've seen an escalation in rhetoric between the president and California Governor Gavin Newsom. Earlier today, Donald Trump appeared to endorse an earlier allegation or suspicion that Gavin Newsom should be arrested. He said it was a good idea. Gavin Newsom immediately pushed back, saying that was a move towards authoritarianism. The rhetoric is increasing, and now the escalation as well on the ground of U.S. military forces, active duty Marines being sent in a supporting role, but still on the ground nonetheless, in addition to those National Guard troops.
Meanwhile, protesters are gathering again in L.A. Carl Nassman is there.
There had been a more peaceful protest taking place near one entrance of the federal building here. That's just been declared an unlawful assembly by the authorities on the ground. Behind me, a fairly large police presence. We're seeing police and California Highway Patrol here. What they're trying to do is block access to that freeway where we saw those demonstrators go exactly down this ramp to be able to occupy that space. We've been here over the past 2 to 3 hours or so. This has definitely changed now. It feels a lot more charged, a lot more emotional than it did earlier.
Palestinians in the Gaza Strip say they've been fired on once again while on their way to an aid distribution site run by the US Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Witnesses said not only had the Israeli military fired on them, but for the first time, they'd also been attacked by Palestinian gunmen, apparently allied with the IDF. The Israeli army has called on residents of 3 Houthi-controlled ports in Yemen to leave immediately. The warning is seen as a precursor to Israeli attacks on installations used by the Iranian-backed Houthis to hit Israel. The head of NATO, Mark Rutte, has warned that Russia could be ready to attack a member of the alliance within 5 years. He called on NATO countries to significantly increase defence spending to 5% of GDP.
Wishful thinking will not keep us safe. We cannot dream away the danger. Hope is not a strategy. So NATO has to become a stronger, fairer and more lethal alliance.
The allies will discuss spending increases at a summit later this month. World News from the BBC. The French President Emmanuel Macron, who is hosting a global summit on the oceans, says a treaty to protect international waters is on track for ratification in January. He said this would finally give the world an international framework to regulate the high seas.
Avant Nice, nous étions à 8%.
Before Nice, there were 8% of protected areas in everyone's exclusive economic zones. We're reaching about 12% after this conference, which means by the announcement we've made, we'll have increased protected marine zones by 50%.
Earlier, the UN chief Antonio Guterres drew cheers when he said the deepest oceans must not be allowed to become a new Wild West. His comment is seen as a sideswipe at President Trump's plans to fast-track US mineral exploration beyond US territorial waters. Police in Sri Lanka have arrested the prison's chief over the release of a convicted financial fraudster under the cover of a presidential amnesty. The cabinet had earlier suspended the Commissioner General of Prisons for the same reason. The president's office said the convict was not among the 400 approved for release during the island's biggest Buddhist festival. A new Saudi law banning outdoor work during the hottest hours comes into effect next week. The Ministry of Human Resources and Social Development said it will apply for 3 months between midday and 3 o'clock in the afternoon to protect workers from adverse effects of extreme heat. The ministry urged employers to abide by the ruling. The world's longest rail service exceeding 10,000 kilometres is to resume next week. The journey between Moscow and Pyongyang.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, as we move into now our tail end of our show for this Monday. 7 minutes past the hour. 6 o'clock is the time in studios, and the phone lines, they are open at 745-2626. Whether you want to give comment on the round of new financing that was approved in Finance Committee just Friday gone, whether you want to talk about the performance of Team Cayman at the final game in the World Cup qualifier this weekend over Honduras, or whether you just want to send a great big shout out of support to the Special Olympians who began their 36th annual Special Olympic Games on Saturday and will run all the way until the 14th of June with a number of great events. Give us a call, 745-2626.
I want to make another comment.
Go ahead.
On this financing thing.
Yeah, please.
So one of the things to note on this issue about financing was the fact that they talked about the increase in rent. So part of this is to be able to accommodate the increases that you're seeing in the renting. So we know that rental is pretty high, and the number seems to be going up. And again, when I talked during the campaign on cruise tourism about being our brother's keeper, I'd just like people to know, if you're a Caymanian right now and you're out there paying rent, well, you're also paying more in terms of government fees to help pay the rent for somebody else. And again, this is why, amongst other things, we have to be our brother's keeper and should be, so that we're trying to make sure that they have an opportunity to have employment. Because I can assure you this number, let's watch, this number is going to increase. Because we have voted as a country against cruise. There's at least 3,000 people that are employed there. Or I should say 3,000 families benefiting from cruise.
Yes, great.
And those numbers are going to increase. And so if you don't like your rent now, it's going to increase.
It's going to get worse.
Your government fees are going to increase, because I bet you, I don't know what I want to bet you, but I'm going to bet you that that number that you just see approved for $45 million, it will not stop there.
No.
Okay, because you're not going to put another 500, 1,000, and God forbid, 3,000 people out of work, and somehow your rent, your government fees, your food, everything remains the same. This is why we must stop with all of these private island people here, people that have flew here and want to carry us back to 1965. It sounds really great. It sounds nostalgic. I mean, I can see right now in my mind's eye a little video where there was a thatch boat. They were putting thatch on a boat right there where Berkeley Bush built a dock in 1965. Oh, how nostalgic, how romantic. But I'll tell you what, you really don't want to go back there, right? And mosquitoes should remind you, you don't want to go back there. And we have to be our brother's keeper, and we have to do that by saying, yes, we have to be sensible, but we have to be a little bit more than talking about planting a tree. A little bit more than that. A little bit more than talking about saving lime lizards. Because you might like me for saying it, but I'm just going to tell you, you're not going to take, and bear in mind now, the government's talking about all these supplementaries. And we're going to get on to some of this creative, I don't want to call it creative accounting, but creative budgeting process that goes on. But let's just be clear. You're not going to take 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, up to $50 million from the government budget and balance in the books, okay? When the government is now losing revenues, you're going to have even more people knocking at the door.
Yes.
It doesn't get less. It gets more, it increases. So let us all just buckle up our seatbelts and prepare. I can tell you right now, the cruise lines have already been dropping cruises, not just for this year, but next year is looking dim.
Yes.
So let's just all buckle up. And I guess the only thing that we can actually say is whatever dollar we have in our pocket, we might be able to gamble that away. And those who don't gamble might be able to smoke a spliff. But we're going to have problems, so buckle up.
Yes, no, quite right. And certainly you talk about rising costs, certainly potential further threats to the needs assessment unit and the welfare department. Right now, financial assistance covering 1,700 families or approximately 6,800 people. But as the cruise tourism further declines and or degrades, again, we talk about it all the time, 12 visits expected for the month of June, and those numbers are expected to dwindle even lower as the year continues, and arguably as next year looms around. The government expecting to spend more, but still not quite sure, and certainly still not quite out of the woods yet as to whether we won't end the year as expected leading up to the last election in a deficit position. Obviously, the government doing everything it can to avert that reality. But again, there are certain realities that we cannot get away from. One of which, of course, June 1st was the start of hurricane season. The rainy season was also arguably the start of summer here in the Cayman Islands. And what happens in the summer? Well, your utility bills increase as well, which is the irony of it all. The hottest months of the year, when you use your AC even more, is the time that your utility company usually raises their rates.
When it rains, it pours, is it?
When it rains, it pours, exactly. So more challenges as it relates to the cost of living. That places more challenges on the government and certainly more challenges on the average Caymanian and the average household. So clearly we got a lot of work to do and a lot of challenges on the next horizon. How will we overcome them all? Well, in a word, leadership. But the question is, will we get it? Again, that jury remains open on that subject. Moving away from Finance Committee on to another subject relevant to the environment in the headlines today, this time drawing from the pages of The Independent. We see a headline, "No environmental impact needed for Marriott's coastal restoration project," which I find rather interesting, if not hypocritical. But here it is. Here's a few excerpts. The National Conservation Council has voted to exempt the Grand Cayman Marriott Beach Resort from requiring a full environmental impact assessment for its coastal restoration project. The decision, reached during a meeting on June 4th, follows months of technical review by the Department of Environment. It concluded that sufficient environmental data had already been submitted with the application to evaluate the project's potential impacts. The decision allows the department to now proceed with a coastal works review which will provide recommendations to the Environment Ministry. Cabinet will then make a final decision on whether or not to grant a coastal works permit to the Marriott for its remediation works. The Marriott has applied for a coastal works permit to renourish its beach with sand and install 2 low-profile groins on either side of the property. The hotel also plans to relocate the existing reef balls in a new configuration designed to enhance coastal protection. The project requires about 13,000 cubic yards of sand, which will be sourced from external suppliers, i.e. imported into the Cayman Islands, as insufficient quantities of compatible sand are available locally. The Cayman Islands has established technical specifications for imported sand, including grain size analysis and color matching requirements with 7 Mile Beach. So 7 Mile Beach and those white sandy beaches that we're known for from our own natural resources could be replenished by beach from God knows where, probably Cuba, but that's not the only source of beach sand that we import sand into this country in order to address this beach erosion challenge that seems to continue to plague the Marriott. A couple of things here, Ellio, if I may be first to jump at it, but I know you have your opinions on this subject. First of all, the fact that we decide to exempt the Marriott because this problem has been ongoing for years from an environmental impact assessment, but yet require an environmental impact assessment on everything from road building to airport expansions to cruise port development and other things, again, sort of baffles the mind a little bit. Call it a little hypocrisy, I don't know, but I'm just saying. But also, I think more to the point, I'm dubious about these proposed remediation solution, that is to import sand and replace it from somewhere else. I mean, we know, again, if you've lived in Cayman for longer than 5 minutes, that what Mother Nature takes away, she gives back generously every single year. You need to only look at Royal Palms Beach. When we had this conversation in the fourth quarter or the tail end of 2024 as we approach Christmas, big conversation. You know, the beach is disappearing. Wave action destroyed what was formerly the Royal Palms Beach Bar. We talk about, and again, we struggle to remember the name of the location right next to Royal Palms, but that has obviously water lapping right up to the bar itself, similar to the situation that is going on at the Marriott. But now, if you go back to those same properties today, Royal Palms Beach is back to its former luster. If we look at, the rest of 7 Mile Beach, which also, so why is it different at the Marriott and unlike, say, Royal Palms or anywhere else? Again, it is where we place these concrete structures. The Marriott, and again, this bar next to Royal Palms, whose name escapes us right now, they've got their infrastructure right there.
Isn't it Coral something?
Coral Stone, is it Coral Stone? No, Coral Stone is a condo complex. It's something else. I can't remember the name right now. If somebody remembers it, please WhatsApp it or give us a call. Again, we're old.
Senior
we forget
moments.
things. Senior moments, exactly. But the problem is, where we are building along the coastline. And I think new developments like the Kimpton and the Indigo, they get it. Because you look at where the infrastructure for the Kimpton and the Indigo begin, it is much, much set back from the beach itself, thereby allowing the beach and the ebb and flow of waves to follow the natural course. There are no obstructions. Whereas at the Marriott, they have long argued that because of their beach bar and pool deck extending so close to the waterline is the reason the erosion problem continues to be as bad as it is. Again, the same thing with the bar next to Royal Palms. The exact same argument. So putting sand, whether you get it from Cuba or you get it from boggy sand, not going to make a difference because what you put down is very likely to be pulled right back out as a result of hurricane season this year. And then we're in the, regrettably, same position as we started. Secondly, the reef ball initiative, which, again, sounded promising when it was first proposed. It's been in existence for some time, but clearly, under the present positioning, They're not serving the kind of actual protection that Marriott had anticipated, so much so that now they're going to look at repositioning them in different places. But again, the solutions proposed are dubious. A much more difficult question will be what has been proposed to set new planning regulations for setbacks, moving some of these fixed structures further back. Obviously, that's going to impact the present footprint of some of these older hotels and even condos for that matter, because they were developed 20, 30 years ago, and it would be a huge undertaking to tell them to move their superstructures further back. But in reality, this is a real climate change conversation. This is a real discussion in terms of what are the development regulations, the planning regulations, how we build on the coastline. Is it sustainable, or are we simply just spinning our wheels in the proverbial sand on these issues? Ellio, any thoughts on this?
You didn't say pardon the pun on that one.
I didn't say pardon the pun. No, I didn't. Quite right.
Well, the thing of it is that I definitely, it's something I definitely want to have a bit of a closer look at. But I will say this, is that from this position, I definitely won't mention the word hypocrisy, because I know it's a new NCC, right? That was just recently appointed.
Mm-hmm.
So considering that they're new in the chair, then this is their first position that they're actually taking. I would infer that that's who we're actually talking about that's made this decision. And I have to look closer at the facts before I make anything. But all I'm going to say other than that is that, people are listening in this country, and I'm going to just stress it because I mightn't be here tomorrow, I might go missing, who knows. But let's be clear. People are in this country are listening to some as self-proclaimed owners of this private island. Lots of money flowing, and that is what is influencing a lot of these decisions. Whether there's some of these bankers that live, work in the ivory towers, and according to the numbers that you gave a few weeks ago, sitting and making at least maybe $250,000 a year, and just don't like to deal with the traffic caused from, congestion during cruise ship days or whatever it is. And all I'm going to say is, as I've always said on this program, is that we need to get all the facts and be able to make an objective decision. As it relates to this, I'll do a little further investigation to find out. But I will also mention that according to the report that we discovered during the, at least I discovered during the campaign on the cruise, a Dr. Richard Seymour, according to a report that he did on behalf of the Department of Environment in 2000, talks about the sand drift coming from the northwest, right? Mm-hmm. So again, this is not what you heard on the street. You heard all the time it's coming from the south. And this is why the pier was going to destroy the world. But either way, it came from the northwest. And to your point of it actually going ahead and replenishing all the beach, it would cause us to infer, and I've heard this before as well, to the same argument that you're making, that the Marriott has built itself a little bit too close to the ocean.
Yep.
And, but like I said, I'd prefer to do a little bit more reading myself before I extrapolate too much.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Those are my summary comments on it.
Well, I think they're all fair and good. I'm still trying to find the name of that beach bar / restaurant.
That little slither of land that's in between.
Slither of land between
Royal Palm
and 7 Mile Beach proper. I mean, one person suggested, of course, there's Cayman Reef Resort and Island Pines. That is, I think, more towards the south. I'm looking at perhaps more towards the west direction as we go further out. You got Royal Palms, and then right next door to
Royal
north
Palms. Of Royal Palms.
It's north of Royal Palms. It just, yeah.
And I should know what that is because we had a little meeting there.
Yeah.
I don't.
It just escapes me right now. And to your point, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember it.
It's in the back here. Just tap the back of your head.
It's somewhere. It's somewhere there in that old brain of mine.
Yeah.
But again, the larger conversation in this is setbacks. The issue of beach erosion on 7 Mile Beach, it's a real one. We saw the impacts of wave surge on places like Laguna del Mar and some of the condos closer as we head into Georgetown. Some people argue that the makeshift beach and breakwater that was developed along by Treasure Island blocked the flow of sediment coming from South Sound back up to Northwest Point and then back down seasonally as that, the transportation of sand and sediment does move naturally with the current. But the point is, the more structures we place to impede that natural sediment flow, we are going to end up with the beach erosion that we see every year.
And from everything that I know, that I'm equally inclined to agree with you, right? I mean, beach erosion takes place even if there's nothing on the beach, but there's normally, especially in Cayman, that bit of a nature replenishment process that occurs. But clearly, if you put some break there on the beach, then it makes it much easier. And I've seen that on videos where persons are actually showing how beach erosion and stuff works. That you'll see where that wave action as a result of that resistance that you've put in the sand causes that erosion process to take place much quicker and much more depth. But obviously the NCC on this particular case is approving, just for clarity, and why I want to look at the decision and what information it is that exists, is that they're actually approving the replenishment process, right? They're saying, we're going to allow you to be able to put new sand back there, and we're talking that that's possibly going to be imported. That's something that we could discuss as well, because we understand that there's a little reservoirs of sand somewhere. I think when we had Mr. David Miller here on the program, he was talking about something there. Like it's foggy.
Yeah.
But there's a possibility that you have some sand that's you could utilize there. But yeah, I'd like to see
the name of the property.
Okay, found it.
We touched on it. We got it right.
Go ahead. I'm gonna put my tone on.
Coral Beach. Coral Beach Bar.
See, I knew I said something.
You said you did say Coral Beach.
Yeah, I said
Bay
that
or something like that. And there is the condos that are at the front of it. But yes, the Coral Beach.
Yeah, I think I said
Bar.
It was like Coral Beach. Yeah, because I thought that's what I heard.
Yeah, so that's what it is. And again, yes, at one stage, that same beach, maybe 2021 was a full, beautiful beach. Now, 2024, 25, the water line is literally
staircase with a drop off. Yeah.
Exactly. It looks just like the Marriott is. And again, we say and insist that it is those fixed structures that are causing the problem, the encroachment of development on the beach side that has been stated for time immemorial, that these are the issues that are leading to, or if not encouraging, beach erosion. And this importation of sand is just a Band-Aid approach that really does not represent significant success. Marriott will be doing it all over again.
It's when we almost don't learn from history, right? I mean, look at what the elderly people did. They didn't really build on the beach, right?
For good reason. They knew what they were doing.
I think they put dead bodies out there.
Yeah.
They didn't build on the beach. But again, the question is, as we talk about think tanks for the COVIDs and the Hurricane Ivans and the other topics, it's the same thing here.
Yeah.
Well, fine, we're experiencing that. What's going to be done about it? What impact now? What legislative changes? What modifications are going to be made going forward in relation to construction as it relates specifically along the beaches? I'm pretty sure many of our past parliamentarians would like to look back and say that was surely we can learn something going forward.
Indeed.
That's what I would like to hear.
Yes.
I remember talking about graveyards. I remember having simple discussions in the parliament saying if there was a hurricane, during Hurricane Ivan, if we had a mass situation, we don't even have legislation for mass burial. There's just a lot of things that needs to be done in Cayman. I'm just wondering when is it going to happen?
Well,
anyway,
again,
it's been a great discussion.
The real issue is the setbacks. I think even I've heard it called, a managed retreat from the shoreline. This is a much more difficult conversation, but I argue today it is a much more solution-based approach to our current problem than that which is being presented to us now. But hopefully, as you say, we can talk about it at length at another time. At 28 minutes past the hour, 6 o'clock, that's all the time we have for you today. But as always, tune into Straight Talk Monday to Friday right here on Bobo FM.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news